The reading that I have decided on is The Intentional Termination of Life, written by Bonnie Steinbach. Euthanasia is a long discussed topic that has various different views by different people. This reading was written in response to James Rachel's claim that there is a moral difference between active and passive euthanasia. The author of this reading, Steinbach, argues that this claim is incorrect. The terms active and passive euthanasia basically refer to either intentionally killing someone versus intentionally letting that person die. This reading refers greatly to the American Medical Association and the idea that active euthanasia is prohibited. Ending life-prolonging treatment is not euthanasia, but this sometimes gets confused with it because it seems as though it is simply letting someone die. The purpose of this article was to inform the readers of the misconceptions around euthanasia. Euthanasia is a controversial topic, but Steinbach uses this article in order to inform of the two major exceptions that ending life-prolonging treatment are not grouped in with intentionally letting that person die. The first situation that is described within this article speaks about how a patient has the right to refuse treatment. This situation would not be considered euthanasia. In the event that a person is suffering more than treatment is able to help them, sometimes ending life-prolonging treatment is the best option for that. Any human being has the right to refuse treatment if that is what they feel is best for themselves. This situation is a hard one, but sometimes the pain and suffering is far greater than just being kept alive by a life-prolonging treatment. Any competent adult has the right to refuse treatment, even if their reasoning for why is not the best. The decision to end a treatment that is being done to keep you living longer is a very difficult one. Humans have the right to refuse treatment, but this refusal of treatment would not be considered euthanasia. Euthanasia in itself is not morally permissible. A person making the decision to end treatment does not fall under euthanasia, and ending treatment would be morally permissible. This is due to the fact that the person is able to make that decision for themselves if the medicine that they are currently on is causing them more pain than stopping the medicine would be doing for them. Another big situation that is described within this article is the decision a doctor makes to end a patient's treatment. There are some instances where a certain treatment is not benefiting the person receiving it at all, but actually that treatment is causing more pain to the patient than it is relief. Is a medicine truly worth it if the pain being caused is much greater than the outcome of the medicine was meant to be? Most doctors will base this decision off of A, if the patient is responding well, and B, if that patient is having a good quality of life while on this treatment. If the answer to that question is no, then it sometimes is the best decision to stop treatment in order to relieve that patient of that pain. This decision is a very hard one for a doctor, and one that takes a lot of considerations into place. And the decision to end a treatment that is potentially keeping a person alive, but is also causing them a lot of pain, puts a lot of stress on that doctor to decide that the treatment must be stopped. It's a very difficult decision for a doctor to decide to end a treatment, but sometimes that is the only option left. Ceasing treatment can be seen as intentional termination of life in many aspects. Most obviously, ending treatment will lead to death, but when all other options have been tried, this can be the only option sometimes. The decision a doctor makes to end treatment for a patient and let them die is a form of euthanasia, but it is typically the morally correct decision to make. It is most definitely one of the hardest decisions for a doctor to decide that they must end a patient's treatment. But in the end, sometimes ending the treatment will relieve the patient of more pain than the treatment is causing them. Both circumstances can be seen as forms of passive euthanasia. The decision either the patient makes for themselves or the doctor makes for them both result in treatment being ended. The article lays out how sometimes ending a treatment is the best option, though, and would be morally accepted. It can be hard to understand how these cases do not fall under euthanasia, but when the decision is the morally correct decision, sometimes it is the best decision. The patient nor the doctor want death to be the answer, but in some instances, the illness is far greater than any treatment is able to help them. This is why passive euthanasia can be seen as morally permissible, but active euthanasia is not. Overall, euthanasia has been a long-sought debate about what is considered morally acceptable and what is not. This article laid out two very good points for why a person may decide to discontinue taking a medicine that is keeping them alive. While this is not technically considered euthanasia, many believe that it is letting a person die and thus would fall under passive euthanasia. The same goes for a doctor deciding to end a patient's treatment. It is difficult to decide whether euthanasia is morally permissible or not, and it has a lot to do with the circumstances that surround it. But in the end, that decision comes down to the patient and the doctor to decide what the best choice would be.